You know those families that look like they were plucked straight out of a Hallmark catalog? Matching Christmas pajamas, summer vacations in picture-perfect cabins, a golden retriever named something like Max or Daisy. Yeah, that was us. At least, that's what it looked like from the outside. My name's Carter. I'm the oldest of two daughters in the Andrews family. Yep, daughters. I know. Weird coming from a guy, right? I'll explain. I was adopted at birth. My parents always wanted a son, but after a string of miscarriages, they went through adoption. That's how I came into their lives. Only later in life did I start identifying as male. But back then, I was just their little girl. Their first little girl. And for a while, I thought that meant something. My parents, Laura and Greg, were the kind of people who hosted backyard barbecues in the spring and built elaborate haunted houses in October. Dad ran a successful construction company. Blueprints and sawdust were his world. Mom, a former interior designer, had turned full-time homemaker once I came into the picture. She had Pinterest boards before Pinterest was even a thing. We lived in a big two-story house with white shutters and a wraparound porch in a quiet neighborhood that smelled like fresh-cut grass and birthday cake. My room was the second on the left upstairs, painted pale yellow with white crown molding and shelves my dad built himself. It overlooked the maple tree where cardinals nested every spring. I loved that tree. I loved that room. I loved them. Growing up, I was the star of the show. Dance recitals? They were front row. School projects? They helped glue macaroni like it was the Sistine Chapel. I had a scrapbook for every year of my life. First steps, first sleepover, first spelling bee trophy, all preserved in carefully labeled photo albums. They called me our little miracle. And I believed it. We had our Sunday routines, pancakes, church, farmer's market. I was close with both of them. Every time I scraped a knee or had a bad dream, they were there. Dad taught me how to ride a bike. Mom taught me how to braid hair, even though I hated sitting still long enough to let her. We made gingerbread houses in December and watched fireworks from the roof in July. Our life was good. Beautiful, even. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that beautiful things have a tendency to crack, quietly at first. So quietly that by the time you hear the splinter, it's already too late to stop the break. And the first fracture in our perfect picture? She came 5 years later. But that's a story for another part. The summers were my favorite. Dad would take Fridays off sometimes, and we'd drive to the lake just before sunset. He'd bring that old metal cooler, dinged and rusted in the corners, with sodas and cold sandwiches inside. Mom always packed extra towels, even though we barely ever used them. I'd run barefoot through the sand, kicking up clouds of dust, pretending I was racing the wind. We called it golden hour. Not because of the light, though it was gorgeous, but because those moments felt like they were dipped in something precious. Something untouchable. By the time I was 8, I'd memorized every crack in our driveway, every hiding spot in the house, and every story behind the photos on the hallway wall. There was the one of Dad holding me on his shoulders, laughing as I wore his hard hat way too big for my head. Another of Mom and me at the beach, her hair windblown and wild, both of us squinting at the camera like we'd just discovered happiness for the first time. Our house was full of warmth. I'd fall asleep to the sound of old records playing downstairs, Fleetwood Mac or Elton John, and the soft murmur of my parents talking. They had this way of laughing with each other that made the whole house feel safe. When I started 4th grade, my parents threw a back-to-school bash for me and the neighborhood kids. Streamers, balloons, little chalkboard signs with everyone's names on them. They even hired a magician who, in hindsight, was probably just some broke college student with a rabbit and a deck of cards, but at the time, it felt like magic. Every report card I brought home got pinned to the fridge. Every drawing, every misspelled story about dragons or astronauts, I swear they saved everything. Dad even built me a small desk in the garage where I could invent things like he did. Most of the time, I ended up gluing popsicle sticks to Legos and calling it a machine, but he never once made fun of it. And the way Mom looked at me? Like I was the center of the universe. Like I could do no wrong. It wasn't just love, it was pride. And I carried that pride around like armor, like I was protected by it, like it would always be there. But nothing stays frozen in golden hour forever. The sun always sets. And when it did for us, it was a quiet announcement, one winter night at dinner, between bites of meatloaf and mashed potatoes. "I'm pregnant," Mom said, her eyes shining with that same glow I used to think was reserved for me. And just like that, the story began to shift. After Mom's announcement, things didn't change right away. In fact, for a while, they got even better. I was 10, old enough to understand what it meant, but still young enough to believe that love wasn't something that needed to be divided, that there was always more of it to go around. The house buzzed with new energy. Baby books stacked up on the coffee table. Paint swatches covered the walls of the old guest room. Names were whispered like secrets: Isabel, Emily, June. None of them felt real to me. Not yet. It was all just anticipation. Mom included me in everything. We went shopping for baby clothes together, and she let me pick out a onesie with tiny rocket ships. "You think she'll want to be an astronaut?" she'd asked, smiling. I shrugged, already imagining the tea parties and sleepovers I'd be hosting with my little sister. Dad built the crib by hand, sanded every spindle, varnished it smooth. I watched him work in the garage with sawdust in his hair, humming along to the radio. He let me hold the flashlight while he drilled the screws, like I was part of something sacred. We were building a family, brick by brick. By spring, the whole house was preparing for her. Baby-proofed cabinets, a new rocking chair by the window, a pale green nursery that smelled like fresh paint and lavender. I remember tracing my finger along the edge of the mobile hanging over the crib, tiny paper stars swaying on invisible threads. They named her Lily. And when she was born on a rainy Wednesday morning in April, I held her in the hospital room, wrapped in a blanket with pink elephants on it. She looked so small, like she didn't belong in a world so big. Her fingers curled around mine. I remember that moment so clearly, like it was frozen in glass. "She's going to need you," Mom said softly, brushing Lily's wispy hair with her fingertips. "You're her big sister now. She's going to look up to you." I nodded, chest tight with something I couldn't name. Responsibility, maybe. Or pride. Or both. At home, everything slowed down. Nights were quiet except for Lily's cries. Days blurred together in a haze of bottle feedings, diapers, and lullabies. And for a while, I didn't mind the shift. I helped out where I could, made bottles, changed her, even read her picture books I'd long outgrown. I told myself this was just a new kind of golden hour. A quieter one. But sometimes, in the quiet, I'd catch glimpses. The way Mom would forget to ask about my day. The way Dad missed my science fair because Lily had a fever. The way my report card sat on the kitchen counter for a week before anyone noticed. They were small things. Easy to excuse. So I did. Because I didn't know then what I know now. That sometimes love isn't taken from you all at once. Sometimes, it's peeled away layer by layer. And I hadn't even reached the core yet. It started small. Subtle. So subtle I almost gaslit myself into thinking I imagined it. At first, it was just missed dinners. "Lily's teething," Mom would say, bouncing her on her hip while my plate went cold. "We'll eat later." Later never came. I'd end up microwaving leftovers, eating alone at the counter while the rest of the house went quiet behind closed doors. Then came the cancellations. A dance recital they forgot to show up to, claimed they were at Lily's pediatric appointment, which ran late. A birthday party they said they'd help plan, then bailed on last minute because Lily had a rash. And then there was the spelling bee regionals. I placed third. They didn't even ask how it went. I remember walking into the kitchen, ribbon still tucked in my bag, hoping for just a sliver of interest. Instead, I found Dad bent over Lily's new stroller, twisting the wheels on with surgical focus while Mom fed her mashed bananas in one of those cartoon-colored silicone spoons. "Oh, hey," Dad said absently when he finally noticed me standing there. "How was your thing?" Thing. It was just a word, but it felt like a wedge between us. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because I didn't want to sound ungrateful, right? After all, Lily was just a baby. She needed them. I was 12 now. I was supposed to understand. Be helpful. Be mature. But that excuse started to wear thin. Quickly, they started saying things like, "Don't be dramatic," whenever I brought up feeling ignored. "We're just exhausted," Mom would say, rubbing her temples. "Can you please stop making this about you?" So I stopped. Stopped asking. Stopped expecting. I started walking home from school instead of waiting to be picked up, because half the time they forgot. I made my own meals. I helped with Lily. I cleaned. I kept my room spotless. I stayed quiet. And every time I tried to claw back even a sliver of their attention, it was like chasing shadows. One night, I overheard them talking after they thought I was asleep. "She used to be so sweet," Mom whispered. "Now she's just distant." "She's going through puberty," Dad said. "They're all moody at that age." I laid there, staring at the ceiling fan, letting those words etch themselves into my bones. Moody. Distant. It never occurred to them that maybe I wasn't changing, maybe they were. By the time Lily was 4, the contrast between us was like night and day. Her drawings covered the fridge. Mine disappeared. Her every milestone was filmed, shared, praised. I graduated 8th grade with honors and got a distracted pat on the back. On her 5th birthday, they rented a pony. For mine, we forgot to buy cake. That was the year it stopped being small things. That was the year I started keeping score. And no one, not even me, knew what kind of fire that would ignite. I don't think anyone ever plans on fading out of their own family. It's not like I woke up one day and decided to become invisible. It just sort of happened. Slowly, like watching your reflection blur on a foggy mirror, only realizing too late that you've been standing there alone the whole time. By the time I hit high school, the differences were no longer subtle. They were deliberate. Calculated. I'd get home after volleyball practice, sometimes soaked to the bone from the rain, and they wouldn't even notice I was through the door. But if Lily scraped her knee on the sidewalk or even sneezed too loudly, my mom's entire world would screech to a halt. She'd go full code red, scooping her up like she'd just been hit by a truck. My dad, once so proud of every science project and homemade trophy I brought home, now only looked up from his phone when Lily came prancing in with a crayon drawing of a stick-figure family where I was conspicuously missing. I'd stare at those drawings, taped proudly to the fridge, and notice how the house she drew always had 3 people in it: Mom, Dad, and her. Sometimes a dog. Never me. I don't think Lily meant anything by it. She was just a kid, soaking up the dynamic we were all silently pretending wasn't happening. Kids aren't stupid. They feel everything, even when they don't understand it. And what she felt was that I didn't belong in the portrait anymore. I started spending more time outside the house. I'd stay late at the library or crash at a friend's place, telling them my Wi-Fi was out again, or we had family visiting, or some other harmless lie. Nobody really pried. Everyone figured I had this rock-solid suburban life at home, white picket fence, loving parents, the whole facade. And I let them believe it, because admitting the truth out loud felt like confirming that it was me who failed, not them. There was one night, though, that carved itself into my memory like initials in wet cement. I'd gotten a part in the school play, nothing big, just a side character with 4 lines. But I'd worked my ass off for it. I left a flyer on the fridge, circled the date, even reminded them at dinner the night before. They promised they'd be there. Opening night came. I peeked out from backstage as the lights dimmed. Families filed in, chattering and laughing, the air buzzing with anticipation. I scanned the crowd. Over and over. Row after row. They never came. When I got home, still in my stage makeup and with roses I'd bought for myself, Lily was dancing in the living room in a brand new dress. Music blasting, Mom and Dad cheering her on like she was on Broadway herself. They'd forgotten. Completely. I stood there in the doorway, invisible again, and something just snapped. Not in a loud, fiery way. No, it was colder than that. Quieter. Like a door locking behind you. That was the moment I realized I was done trying. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I went upstairs, peeled off my costume, and started packing a mental list of everything I would one day take back. Not out of spite. Out of survival. I was 22 when it happened. Living at home again had never been part of the plan, but after college, thanks to some unexpected tuition hikes, a roommate who bailed mid-lease, and the brutal cost of living, I moved back in to regroup, save, and get my life in order. I was working full-time, grinding hard at a small marketing firm while taking freelance gigs on the side. Every cent I earned, I tucked away with precision. I wasn't buying clothes or eating out. I was sacrificing for something real, my own place, my own freedom. By then, Lily was 17. Senior year of high school, popular, loud, always filming TikToks in the kitchen or screaming into FaceTime about college tours she barely cared about. She had a new look every week, hair dyed rose gold one month, snow white the next. Everything handed to her like she was born holding a backstage pass to life. I didn't hate her, but I resented her more than I even knew I could. The favoritism had become so normalized it wasn't even hidden anymore. At family dinners, she'd dominate the conversation, and our parents hung on her every word like she was the second coming. When I spoke, they nodded absently, then pivoted the spotlight right back to her. If I stayed quiet, no one even noticed I was in the room. But it was money that finally crossed the line. I'd been saving for 3 years, freelance checks, bonuses, skipped vacations, all funneled into a high-yield savings account under my name. $50,000. That was my future. My key to getting out. I only found out it was gone because of a bounced rent deposit for the new apartment I'd just applied for. I remember standing in the bank lobby, humiliated, breath short, as the teller pulled up my account and casually confirmed it. It looks like there was a full transfer made last Friday. My stomach dropped. A transfer? To where? I got the details. It had been moved to my dad's account. An internal transfer, legal because, once upon a time, he'd helped me open the account when I was underage. A technicality. One I'd long forgotten about. When I confronted him, heart hammering, hands cold, he didn't deny it. He didn't even flinch. We needed it, he said, as if that explained everything. Lily's turning 18. She deserves something special. I stared at him, stunned. You used my savings to buy Lily a car? It's not just a car, Mom chimed in from behind him, arms crossed like she was defending a court case. It's her graduation, her entrance into adulthood. It's symbolic. No, I whispered. It's theft. Dad had the audacity to scoff. Don't be dramatic. You live in our house rent-free. We've supported you for years. That money was shared. No, I repeated, louder this time. It wasn't. I stormed out. I drove around for hours, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. 50 grand. Gone. My future stolen, just like every birthday, every accomplishment, every chance I had at being seen. They didn't even apologize. When I finally came home, Lily was in the driveway, posing next to a brand-new, white BMW with a red bow on top. She grinned at me like she'd just won the damn lottery. I felt something inside me twist, something ancient and sharp and unrelenting. She didn't know the cost. She didn't care. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the silence pressing into me like concrete. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to plot. If they wanted to rob me of everything I'd built, then I'd show them what it felt like to lose what they valued most. I wouldn't just take back what was mine. I'd take more. I didn't speak to them for 3 days after the money was gone. I didn't slam doors or scream. I didn't leave angry voicemails or throw dishes. I just moved in silence, and that scared them more than any outburst ever could. They tiptoed around the house like I was a bomb they couldn't figure out how to defuse. Lily, on the other hand, waltzed in and out like nothing happened, like I should have been happy for her. Her big 18 was coming up, and the car was just the beginning. There were whispers of a beach trip, designer shopping sprees, something about a surprise weekend in Miami. It made me sick. That 50,000? It wasn't just money, it was proof that no matter how much I worked, sacrificed, or kept my head down, they still saw me as disposable. A fallback. A placeholder. I was a tool they reached for when it suited them, and tucked away when it didn't. But I've never been the type to stay broken for long. The night after Lily's car reveal, I sat on my bedroom floor with my laptop, a legal pad, and an open bottle of whiskey I hadn't planned to touch until I moved out. I didn't drink it for comfort, I drank it like a pact. A line crossed, and then I got to work. First, I combed through every financial statement, every old login I could remember, joint accounts from when I was 17, credit cards they helped me open for, building history, the co-signed loan I paid off years ago. Most of them were dormant now, but the access? Still there. They never changed anything. They thought I wouldn't look. Amateurs. They'd used me like a bank, so I decided to treat them like a business. One I was going to dismantle from the inside out. I found their emergency fund first, Dad's secret savings account he thought he was slick about, tucked under a shell corporation linked to his business. Probably where he stashed unreported bonuses or extra project funds. Sloppy. I traced the account back to his construction firm's overhead. No security measures. I had full read-only access. He never revoked it. I smiled for the first time in days. Then I checked Mom's credit line, one she bragged about in passing, thinking I wasn't listening. She used it to pay for all of Lily's fashion, gadgets, and the weekly salon visits. That line had a lot of leeway, and she paid it off through direct debit. I didn't touch anything. Not yet. This wasn't going to be a crime of passion. It was going to be a masterpiece. A surgical strike. But there was one thing I needed first. Insurance. So I started documenting every receipt, every bank transaction tied to me. I pulled old emails, screenshots of Dad asking for a quick transfer to help with bills, Mom asking to use my debit card to get Lily's school stuff and never paying me back. I even found the original paperwork from when Dad helped open my savings account. My name, his custodial role. The legal gray area they'd crawled through. I made copies. Printed everything. Backed it all up twice, cloud and flash drive. I wasn't just going to take back what they owed me. I was going to burn the pedestal they'd built for Lily, and I was going to make them watch it fall. I waited 6 weeks. 6 long, deliberate, brutal weeks. I kept smiling when I needed to, nodding when spoken to, fading into the wallpaper like I always had. Let them believe I'd accepted it. Let them think I was too defeated to fight back. And during that time, I was building. Every password they forgot to update. Every device Lily left unlocked. Every careless moment where they showed me how little they saw me, I used it all. I moved my money through a trail so winding that not even I could track it without a map I wrote by hand. Cryptocurrency, offshore routing platforms, temporary accounts tied to burner emails I deleted the moment the transfers were done. I didn't take it all at once. That's not how you bleed something. You nick a vein and let it drain slow. It started with a misrouted vendor payment from Dad's construction firm, $12, 500 sent directly to an old LLC I'd created years ago for freelance work. The company technically still existed, and the invoice looked legitimate enough to pass through the cracks. It did. Then came the refund scams, returning purchases Lily made online, redirecting the cash to a prepaid card in my name. Another $3,000 there. Then came Mom's credit line. She'd used my credentials to open it in college when I had better credit. That was her mistake. One I leveraged with interest. A few large charges, all to accounts I controlled. Then I reported fraudulent activity, froze the card, and watched her spiral over her missing limit like a fly caught in glass. I took from everywhere. Quietly. Strategically. By the time I made the final sweep, my accounts had just over $100,000 sitting across 4 aliases and a trust I'd registered months prior under an anonymous custodial agreement. Completely legal. Perfectly hidden. Untraceable, unless you knew exactly what you were looking for. Then came the cherry on top. Lily's car. It was the night before her birthday weekend, the one they were planning in Miami, naturally. She'd left the keys hanging from her little designer key hook by the front door, still labeled, "My BMW baby," in pink bubble letters. I waited until the house was dark, crept downstairs with a duffel bag over my shoulder, and swiped them in complete silence. Not that anyone would have heard. They hadn't heard me in years. I drove her car out of the driveway at 2:13 a.m. Didn't even look back. I parked the car 30 miles out in a secure garage I'd rented under my new alias. Changed the plates. Wiped it clean. That car? It was mine now. Paid for by my stolen future, and I wanted it as a trophy. The next morning, I left the house like any other day, bag over my shoulder, earbuds in, quiet as ever. Only this time, I didn't go to work. I didn't go to the library. I didn't go anywhere they could find me. I went to my new apartment, leased and paid for in full, under my new identity, in a different city. When they realized the money was gone, it was chaos. I got the calls, first from Dad, then Mom, then a flurry of furious texts from Lily. Where's my car? Why is your name on this charge? Did you hack us? This isn't funny, Carter. No, it wasn't funny. It was fair. I blocked every number. Changed my emails. Shut down all social media. I ghosted them like they ghosted me every time they looked straight through me and smiled. They took my future. So I built a better one. Out of their resources. Out of their ignorance. Out of the fire they handed me. I sat on the balcony of my new place that night, looking out at the skyline, the BMW parked safely 2 floors below, my bank accounts full, my name mine again. And for the first time in my life, I exhaled without bracing for disappointment. The first message came 2 days after I vanished. It was my mom's voice, tight with panic under a strained layer of fake calm, like she still believed she could talk me down if she just used that sing-song tone she'd always pulled out when trying to guilt me into being quiet. Carter, sweetheart, we need to talk. This has all gotten out of hand. Just call us. Please. I didn't. The second message was angrier. My father's voice, clipped and low, like a ticking clock about to explode. What you did wasn't just selfish, it was criminal. You need to come home and explain yourself. Before it gets worse. I laughed when I heard that one. Before it gets worse? They had no idea what worse felt like. Worse was standing at the front of a school stage and realizing your parents weren't in the crowd. Worse was eating birthday cake alone at 14 because Lily had a soccer banquet they just couldn't miss. Worse was watching $50,000 of your life disappear into someone else's ribbon-wrapped joyride. The voicemails came in waves after that. Mom tried soft again. Dad tried threats. Then came Lily's messages, text after wall of text, alternating between fury, confusion, and self-pity. You seriously stole my car? WTF is wrong with you? Do you hate me or something? This isn't funny. You're literally insane. They're freaking out. Just come back. You've made your point. I didn't ask for the money, you know. That one almost got to me. Almost. But here's the thing. It didn't matter whether she asked or not. She took. Willingly. Repeatedly. Without ever stopping to ask where it came from, or what it cost me. After a week, the tone shifted again. Lily must have told them I was ignoring everything, because suddenly the anger drained out of the messages, replaced by a kind of hollow nostalgia that felt more manipulative than sincere. Carter, we miss you. This family isn't the same without you. Please, just let us know you're okay. They started calling my old job. My friends, even emailed my college advisor. I'd covered my tracks well, new accounts, no paper trail, no forwarding address, but they were grasping now. Desperate. And for once, I was the one they couldn't reach. I played the messages on speaker while drinking coffee on my new balcony, the city skyline glowing like a promise I finally believed in. I let their voices fill the empty space, not because I missed them, but because I wanted to remember exactly what it sounded like when the tables turned. Each call, each message, each begging little voicemail, those were my trophies now. Proof that the girl they ignored, the one they siphoned dry and shoved into the background, had finally walked off stage. And they had no idea what to do without her. I blocked their numbers the next morning. Every single one. I didn't need closure. I didn't need apologies. I didn't need to give them anything. They were echoes now. And I had a new life to live without them in it. Starting over sounds cinematic until you're actually doing it. There's no montage. No inspiring background music. No sudden epiphany where everything clicks into place. It's waking up in a strange bed in a strange apartment, breathing unfamiliar air, staring at a blank wall, and realizing that, for the first time, everything in front of you is yours. And no one else gets to touch it. The place was small. Not broke college student small, but modest. One bedroom. Brick walls. A narrow kitchen with black subway tile and squeaky drawers. I bought furniture secondhand. Built a desk from raw lumber and cinder blocks like I was back in a dorm room, only this time it didn't feel temporary. It felt intentional. I got a job at a startup, not high-paying, but enough. They liked my portfolio. I kept my head down. I went by my real name now. No fake aliases. No masks. I was done bending myself into whatever shape people needed to justify keeping me around. And that BMW? Still mine. Parked in the garage below like a secret I no longer needed to hide. I didn't drive it much, but sometimes late at night, I'd take it out on the back roads outside the city, windows down, music up. Just me and the hum of the engine and the sound of my own breathing, even and steady, no longer clenched like it used to be. I built a routine. Grocery trips on Sundays. Jogging in the mornings. Coffee from the place downstairs that burned their beans, but made up for it with good conversation. I made friends, real ones this time. People who didn't know my past or my sister's name or the way my mother's praise always had a hook buried in it. There was a woman in the building across from mine, Raina. She was an architect. Smart. Sharp. We met when I accidentally stole her laundry from the shared dryer. She laughed instead of getting mad. We started talking more. Then sharing meals. Then letting the silence between us stretch without needing to fill it. One night she asked, "So, what's your story?" I stared at her, fingers wrapped around a mug of tea I didn't remember making. For the first time in my life, I didn't know how to answer that question. Because the story I used to tell, the one where I was invisible, overlooked, used up, it didn't fit anymore. "That's the thing," I said quietly. "I think I'm still writing it." She smiled at that. And God, it felt good to say something honest. I got a promotion 3 months later. Nothing huge, but enough to repaint the kitchen and finally buy a real mattress. Raina helped me hang art on the walls, my art, things I sketched during the months I was planning my escape. Abstract. Messy. Raw. Each piece was a scar. But they were mine. One afternoon, I got a letter. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. My mother's. I didn't open it. Just stared at it for a long time before sliding it, unopened, into the back of a drawer. The person it was addressed to didn't live here anymore. He'd moved out. And he wasn't coming back. It had been a year. 12 months since I vanished. 12 months since I took back what was mine, and then some. 12 months since I last heard their voices. I'd stopped thinking about them as much as I used to. At first, they haunted everything. Grocery stores reminded me of my mom. Construction trucks made me think of Dad. Even something as small as pink nail polish on a stranger's hands would pull me back to Lily, to the way she'd smear color across her fingers before every big moment. But time does what time always does, it sands the edges off things. It didn't erase them. It just made them smaller. They sold the house, eventually. I knew they would. The financial fallout must have gutted them. No more Miami vacations. No more BMWs. No more birthday ponies or brand new iPhones, just because. I saw a photo once. Someone tagged Lily in something public before I blocked the new account she made. She looked different. Not worse, not better. Just smaller. Thinner smile. Tired around the eyes. No flashy clothes. No crowd of friends in the background. Just her. Alone. I didn't feel sorry for her. But I didn't feel joy either. I felt nothing. And that, I realized, was the true end of it. That's when I decided to write the letter. Not for them. For me. Mom. Dad. Lily. I want you to know I'm okay. I know you've probably spent a year trying to rewrite what happened. Maybe you've told yourselves I snapped. That I was always dramatic. That I've changed. But I didn't change. I just stopped lying about how much it hurt. You taught me to believe love was conditional. That it could be withdrawn, reallocated, divided like an inheritance. You taught me to expect nothing and give everything. You taught me that my value was measured only in how well I made you comfortable. And then you acted surprised when I stopped playing the game. I didn't leave because I hate you. I left because I finally loved myself more. You won't hear from me again. There won't be reunions, or holidays, or second chances. I'm not keeping one foot in the past just in case you decide I'm worth holding on to again. That door is closed. Not slammed. Just locked. I wish you all peace. But I've finally found mine. Carter. I didn't mail it. Didn't need to. I folded it once and slipped it into a fireproof box, along with my birth certificate, passport, and the deed to my apartment. The tangible proof that this new life, was mine. Not inherited. Not gifted. Not borrowed. Owned. And that night, I made myself dinner, nothing fancy, just roasted vegetables and a lemon chicken I'd finally perfected after months of trying. I set the table. I poured a glass of wine. I turned on music that didn't remind me of anyone but myself. I sat down in the soft light of my kitchen and raised a quiet toast to the person I used to be. The one who waited too long to walk away. And the one who finally did.